We have some special folks that have joined us tonight. A number of members of the Deaf Mentor Cadre are here with us. The Deaf Mentors are folks that can be matched with new families who have just experienced a diagnosis for their child of deaf or hard of hearing. And these are adults who are deaf or hard of hearing and can help introduce you to different options for communication, American Sign Language, deaf culture, and all of the possibilities that are available for you and your families. So we're going to quickly say hello to them each. And I'm going to pin each one of you as we go because a few more of you have shown up. So Barb, I'm going to start with you. Let me move over here. All right, there's Barb. You want to say a quick hello?
Yes, hello, hello, hello. My name is Barb Carlin, and I am the mom of two deaf adults. I grew up in deaf school, and I grew up using American Sign Language. I went to a deaf school. I didn't know what my language was when I first started deaf school. I was like, it might be American Sign Language, it might be English. And then when I had my children, I started to understand more about American Sign Language, and I started taking classes in American Sign Language, and I realized that that is my language. And I was really excited to become a deaf mentor, to be able to reach out to hearing parents, to encourage them to use sign language, to read in English to their kids, to have just all of that exposure to their kids. So I'm happy to be here tonight. So thank you. Thank you, Karen, for having me.
Yep, you bet. I'm going to remove your pin and pin another mentor. Shirley, let's do you next. Hi, Shirley.
I'm waiting for my pin. Am I pinned?
You're pinned. Go ahead.
Okay. So my name is Shirley Hampton. I live in Davenport. I have, both of my parents are deaf. I have two sons. They are both hearing. And I went to a school where they taught me to speak and read lips. Then I transferred eventually to the Iowa School for the Deaf. And once I graduated, I went to Gallaudet University. And I graduated from St. Ambrose University in Davenport. I am currently the president of the Iowa Association for the Deaf. And we have a priority to work more and get more engaged with the deaf youth in Iowa. So I'm really excited to be involved as a mentor for parents and really hoping that this program takes off, and I'm excited to work with everybody.
Thank you, Shirley. I am going to remove your pin. And Bob, here we go. I'm going to add your pin. Okay, you're pinned. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Bob Vizzini. My sign name is like this. I teach American Sign Language at the University of Iowa. I am deaf myself. I grew up just like Shirley, speaking and reading lips. I didn't know sign language until I was 13. And the first time I went into deaf school, I was just completely shocked meeting other deaf people. They helped me so much feel empowered and feel my self-confidence just skyrocket. I felt amazing meeting other people that were like me and having a common experience and common frustrations. And so I learned a lot with that experience. Now I am a deaf mentor, and if parents want to learn sign language or want to learn more about the deaf community, anything to help their child, I'm so very excited to be a part of it. So it's very nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah.
All right. I am going to remove the pin for Bob. And there's one more person I want to highlight, Vanya. And I know you're not officially a deaf mentor, but that's okay. You're very involved. Okay, you're pinned.
Hi, my name is Vanya Kasuf. I have several different identities and several different cultures and languages in the way that I've grown up. I grew up in public schools in Iowa, you know, in the public school system. I'm aware of the system as an adult, but while I was in the public school system, I used several different languages, including American Sign Language, Signed Exact English, speaking, some lip reading and hearing. And so I just really enjoy learning about different cultures. But while I was in the public school system, I was still missing a few things. I think there are a lot of pros and cons to the system and the experience that I had. It's important that we have tools and resources to meet the needs of deaf children so that they are educated in the school system that best meets their needs so that they can develop literacy skills on par with their non-deaf peers. And if they choose to focus on auditory and listening, then they can be successful at that. We just need to make sure that we're always checking in and that they're successful and they have the resources. I really want children to be successful and they have the activities and advocacy appropriate for their needs. I'm not quite a deaf mentor yet, but I am really enjoying learning about the deaf mentor program and figuring out what ways the deaf community can serve and bridge that gap so that deaf children can be successful. If it's I work as an ASL instructor. I've taught from elementary school all the way through college in an interpreter training program. So I've been teaching for 14 years. I used to be a chef. I used to be a manager. I used to run a restaurant. I'm really lucky for the system that I grew up in and that there were a lot of people that supported me and my family. And so my goal is to make sure that we have the right facts, the right information, the right resources to pass along to families. And so I really I'm looking forward to this webinar this evening. Thank you, Karen. And I'll give it back to you.
Thank you, Vanya. All right, so we are getting ready for our main presenters, our main event for this evening. We have with us today, Kimberly Listina, Kim Listina. I'm not used to referring to you as Kimberly, but I just read your name on the screen. So Kim is one of the itinerant teachers for the deaf and hard of hearing with Grant Wood AEA, Area Education Agency here in Iowa. And I reached out to her a couple of months ago and asked her if there might be a family that she might like to highlight the way in which early access AEAs, the itinerant teachers for the deaf and hard of hearing, work with families in Iowa to help those of you who are brand new at this process better understand what the journey can look like and how you can partner together. And Kim knew of a family right off the bat. So we are here tonight with the Cron family, Brittany, Rick, and they are going to talk about Niall. And then also I understand there's also Stella, who is-
There's Stella, yes.
You guys have a full house and a busy night going on, I'm sure.
Yes.
All right. So, and I'm not going to say much else about them because part of the presentation is for them to tell their story. So I am going to turn off my camera and mute myself now. And if everybody would please give them your undivided attention. And then when they're finished, there will be time for question and answer.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Nice to meet you all.
So I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to share my screen, and then you can let us know if you're still able to see the interpreters or if we need to adjust in some way, and we'll go from there. So hoping that you can still see the interpreter.
We can. Yes, you're good to go.
Okay. So we're going to just start off a little bit. When Karen reached out and asked about a family that we would look at with the early access component, the Cron family actually is past that early access stage. They are in the 3-year-old, almost 4-year-old arena with their son Niall. But going through the early access program, it was a little different for the fact that his hearing loss was suspected as being a mild hearing loss initially. So my role changed over the period of time, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So we wanted to go through early access and the experience that we have. We are going to actually make it very conversational. So that way, not only can Brittany and Rick can share their information, but I can also share my perspective, their perspective, and it will be a dual presentation. But really the early access is looking at those infants and toddlers. And there's 3 following criteria that early access goes by. And I actually just copied those from the website, from the early access website, but I included it in the PowerPoint for the fact that Karen did say that the PowerPoint would be accompanying the video recording so that people have that information as they go back. Looking at early access with the vision, basically we're looking at supporting the families and their children, and looking at empowering those families. And anyone that is involved with that family. And the Cron family has always been blessed by really having that big picture of a village. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. There's obviously key principles that we look at in supporting the families, looking at everyday experiences, looking at supports and resources that they may have, looking at a service provider in early intervention. And like I said, I was not as involved with Niall at the beginning, looking at a mild hearing loss because we were thinking he was accessing a lot of the information.
That's good.
We found out that he was not. And so we made some changes and continue to make changes as we learn more about him and as he grows in his settings. We have utilized the family guided routines-based intervention, which basically means that we are working with the families and prioritizing with the families as to their goals and what they want for their child. And in that piece, we coach, and then we also do some guidance and some direct intervention and direct teaching with them. So here is family. So Niall will be 4 coming in February. And Stella is now 2. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. So Niall, as you will learn through this presentation, has had a lifelong experiences with the medical team, given various surgeries along the way, as well as within the community and his family. And his extended family is a huge piece of that. So when I talk about that village, it really is a village. And so we're going to talk about, I mentioned the early access, the team members, the extended family, community members, community agencies, and the medical staff. And it has really all been part of who Niall knows, and he turns each one. So anything that you would like to add, Rick or Brittany, on that piece?
No, you very well included everything. The big part is communication between the providers and us
Yeah.
has been huge. That is the number one priority, communicating.
And like you evaluated earlier on saying about like, we didn't know exactly what his hearing loss was until he was almost, 2.5, 3 years old, then we found out, he was,
or 1.5 to 2, yeah.
Deaf, or wasn't, really hearing. And, like I said, we tried the hearing aids and that was a nightmare or a challenge.
And which Kim will talk about here, but yeah.
And then like I said, obviously Kim got more involved once we knew how significant, severe his hearing loss was.
So going back to this slide, when you talk about the partnership, you kind of hit on that with the communication. And Rick and Brittany, I think that part of that, talk a little bit about your family and how your family has supported you and been an integral part of Niles.
So we're very fortunate to have both our parents helping us out, going to appointments, taking Niall to, other, appointments and therapies and stuff. And like I said, at the early stages, the communication was huge just because like, if we had something going on with Niall, like on another appointment, we could rearrange, we would text Kim and the other ladies. And it was so beneficial for Niall and
huge
just
benefit.
Seeing the improvements he had made, people that wouldn't see him, daily would just be blown away at how far, now had come, and
he continues to come.
Improve.
Yeah.
So the outside services, he was also receiving services for physical therapy and communication at ChildServe, which is an outside agency in this local area. And then he was also receiving support, and we collaborated with the daycare, Love-A-Lot. So we did some of our visits under the age of 3 at Love-A-Lot and some of our visits at home, depending on Rick and Brittany's work schedule, what was going on, kind of that whole big picture piece. And I think that was a huge support for him as well, because again, that community support was.
I 100% agree. And I think it was so cool that you and like Love-A-Lot were able to work together to teach, now in like a different setting and learning experience. And then, I think the teachers at school could also, at Love-A-Lot could, help them too, by the tips that Kim would give to, them.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that we should probably mention is that all of Niles' early access services were before COVID.
Yeah.
So
yes.
We're going to be talking about COVID a little bit later, because as he's been in the preschool setting, COVID was obviously a factor in the communication as well as the delivery of service. But while we were doing early access, it was actually pre-COVID. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about those outcomes. And with that, Rick and Brittany will often say, we don't know, help us. And we knew that they knew Niall better than anyone. And their expertise, they would be able to say like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work, or let's change this. How are we going to do that? So identifying Niall's preferences was huge. He was motivated by food because obviously the eating was a factor when he was younger. She was definitely in there, providing as much as she could with the stages that he was at with surgeries. But we definitely had challenges. Motorically, he wanted to be moving and, the skills that he had to develop along the way. And a professional education may not always be the most important, but bringing us all together, I think really had a huge impact for Niall. And then just his experiences in daily happenings. He was excited to show us, him climbing on all of his vehicles and motor vehicles and what have you, inside and outside. He loved to be outside. So that was where some of our services also began. When you thought about those original outcomes of what you wanted Niall to learn and what you wanted for Niall, how did that change over the 3 years for him?
I would say obviously it started, with him just, building the strength, and getting, sitting up by himself, him rolling over, typical things that, every other kid,
might take for granted.
Yeah. He would have to learn them or not. I mean, and the great thing is like the team members would, show us things, moves or, positions to put Niall in to challenge him or make him work or build the strength. And it was just beneficial for us because obviously, you think you can, help your kid do, what he needs, to advance and grow and, sit up, crawl, eventually pull himself up and stand on things. But just having the overall knowledge of all the other, ladies was huge. And, even we had, a little walker at one time just to put him in so he could build his leg strength up. We had braces on his ankles.
And then, I would say that was the very first part. And then the second part was him starting to communicate with us. How are we going to communicate to him and what's the best way to do it? Kim was very beneficial in helping us do that. And
we're very novelists, I guess you could say, at beginning stage for sign language. And
we're learning new signs that he knows better than what we know.
Yeah, so we definitely have the basics, and obviously knowing your own kids, you can kind of understand what they want and need and stuff. But I think both of us would love to
learn more,
obviously, and I think
become more involved in ASL. Yes, an advocate to other families going through the same situation. Or
he obviously isn't speaking yet, but he's definitely babbling more, and the cochlear implants are working because you can actually, like, if you yell at him or you say something loud, he'll actually turn his head and respond now that he had the implants.
Yep. Sorry, we're very big into Granite Wood, and we could probably go on for hours, so you kind of probably have to tell us to keep going, so sorry.
No, we want to hear from you because you guys you went through that process, and your perspective is really important as providers for us, as feedback, as well as how we can work with families and best meet their needs. So talked a little bit about the sign language, and we will be talking about that as we made some adjustments and continue to make adjustments for his education. So, so I wrote here as the early access service provider, how my role initially had changed. And even though we had identified that mild hearing loss, he was responding in so many different ways, but there were so many things happening for him that in the triage of needs, we were looking at me coupling with the physical therapist or me coupling with the occupational therapist, making sure that we could look at some of those things because we did have a full group of team members that were working together. And needs definitely became factors for us because there were surgery times, there was times that his health was a factor. And then that would impact his physical strength again, and then his endurance to be able to to continue during our session. And then we continued to look at just that ongoing medical monitoring, and then found out the severity of his hearing loss was bilateral, was moving from the mild to a moderate to severe hearing loss.
Yep.
So when you think about what early access has meant to you, given all of his medical needs, you talked a little bit about the strengthening and his skill development and eating. How did that change over time for you as parents?
I mean, well, like now also, I had the cleft lip and cleft palate, and that was a big struggle at first, to get him to eat and drink and everything. And you guys helped with that too.
Everything in terms of how much he should eat or how he should eat, rather than, we've learned so much. I can't even begin to tell you how much.
Finding out what he actually liked, And
it really has helped us with Stella as well. Like things that we would not have known if ChildServe had, if early access had not come into the picture at the beginning. I think we taught Stella things that we would not have known if early access would not have been in our lives. So yeah.
So initially, I supported just kind of that beginning communication. We used gestures and basic sign language, again, thinking that he had auditory access.
Yep.
Looking at, we needed to build functional communication, building those anticipation, and then obviously looking at that whole aspect of what does he understand, the meaning to go with things. We didn't want to just label things, and we definitely wanted it functional. So we began using visual and verbal communication. And motorically, we recognized that, again, the verbal speech was not coming. So what we did is we added more sign support and more visual support for him. I think that as we continue to learn more about Niall, we continue to add more in those aspects of looking at both that visual support of sign language as well as continuing with the verbal, because that was very important for the parents, for him to be able to communicate in a long-term goal, but also being able to communicate with whatever means that meant. So when he would point to a picture, or he would point to what he wanted, or Niall was a very independent little guy, so
Yes.
We would make trips to the kitchen and he would pursue what snack he wanted and pull out the, I believe it was the pancakes out of the freezer.
Yes. Yep.
Into the microwave. So we had many visits with snack time.
Yes, that's very true.
Then looking at that whole language piece, that children learn language best with adults who talk with them. And the talk was sign and the talk was verbal. And interacting with him with whatever was going on, being down on the floor with him. That was something that you guys said that you really felt it was an integral part of being
very huge.
And work with him, yes. Looking at his everyday activities, bath, meal times, all of those factors that just are the daily things that were happening with a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old. So we talked about being like a sports announcer, doing the play-by-play, like this is what I'm doing, this is why I'm doing it, this is you know, going back and forth, and that really developed over time for you guys to be able to get people talking about that. And then looking again as his language, his learning changed of how we adapted there. So we'll talk a little bit about the sign language. So basically, Brittany and Rick have always been open for any communication.
Absolutely.
For Niall, and that's been huge. And the parents, you guys, and the grandparents have both embraced the sign language. Mm-hmm. We use sign language for the family as routines. We generated list of signs. We modified books. We signs in different locations. We did consider the deaf mentor. Every time we would get close to that point that we thought we could pursue that, a surgery was being scheduled and we had
or an illness or
So that was something that we continued to have conversation about, and knowing with early access. So it's kind of exciting to think that the deaf mentors are on here with us.
I know, I love it. Yes.
It kind of goes hand in hand with what we've talked about. Also looked at sign language classes, and that was also a factor of being able to make the commitment to those classes because of his surgery and his health at the time as well. And now we're in the pandemic, so we're a little cautious about that. So we're continuing now with ISD, beginning to look at offering the classes virtually as well. We continue to have those conversations, and I have to say that I feel very fortunate because Brittany and I probably are able to connect, I would say, every 2 weeks or so.
Absolutely. I call Kim when I need, any sort of questions. I feel that we've gained, I trust you. I trust your opinions, your advice, your tips, everything.
Very knowledgeable, and you know people, or you know where
to refer us to or who to. So thank you, Kim. But sorry to interrupt you.
So I think that has always been huge. Number one, that they can ask those questions, and I can give them information like, think about this, and how does this match what's happening with your family right now? It doesn't mean that they necessarily would have to do those things at the time, or this is the way they have to do it. But again, those opportunities and knowing what is happening and what is available, I would have to say is a huge piece.
Mm.
So as we went through early access, we did what was called the home visit activity sheets, where we would write down what we're talking about, what our goals were, things to think about. And Brittany took her own notes as well.
Yes. Right now, I'm known for my notes. I'll forget things if I don't take notes.
And I think having both of those pieces was very helpful. One, Brittany, you know, like she could key in on the things that she felt like she could really address, and then we could go back and review. We made vocabulary lists, one-page sheets that, like I said, could be posted. We used the sign language for the family when we were, you know, they had the posters with babysitters and nannies so that they could see vocabulary right where he was being changed. We modified the books, and Grandpa was very
yes,
which Niall loved. Niall loved vocabulary cards. So we talked a little bit about that whole aspect. We thought it was a unilateral hearing loss in a mild sense. We found it was bilateral with a moderate to severe. And just overall, that hearing health care of that progress was something that you guys had followed through with. And then, Rick, you talked a little bit about that hearing aid. And Brittany, talk about that hearing aid and how Niall responded to that hearing aid.
It definitely was a work in progress. It didn't really go so well.
I think it was more of a toy than a hearing aid. He didn't have any interest in it. And I don't think it was really obviously working at the time, you know, for him or giving him any help. I think it was more or less annoying him. But we had to obviously do that process to get to the cochlear implants.
Right. So we did spent, again, time in the kitchen. Niall was very interested in the pots and pans. So as he was out of the cupboards, we were trying to put the hearing aid on, and then the hearing aid would go off and go in a pot, and then he would cover up the pot and push it away. We recognized that he was not getting that benefit.
Yeah. The best part now is obviously like when we got the cochlear implants, we were constantly chasing them around, you know, and putting the magnets back on. But then slowly you could tell, you know, when they kept increasing them and turning them up, that, you know, it was stimulating him and you could tell he was hearing. And then the best day ever is when when one fell off, he would, you know, put it right back on. And that was awesome because then you know it's working.
Yes. And I think the other thing is, I think early access, they celebrated the moments like we did. They were cheering, there was tears, there was excitement, anything that Niall did to overcome something, like you said, turning the hear. I sent Kim a video the night that Niall put his own implants on. I mean, they celebrate just like we did, you know, we do. And that's the best part is they're excited for those moments that, you know, we were only dreaming of they were going to happen, but we saw them happen. And so, yeah.
True. And so we had not only that aspect of the cochlear implants, the activation, the acceptance over time. Sending that video, I remember it being like 8:10, and I'm thinking,
only me.
And but it was great because again, it was that we were able to celebrate that piece. We were also able to celebrate when, you know, he was using the sign language and he was beginning to be able to communicate with us of what he wanted or know. So our help, you know, all of those signs that he was beginning to utilize at a lower level when we were looking at basic, and now him beginning to put them together to be able to communicate so much more. This one is responding to the sound, and I think you talked about that a little bit already. Refused to wear the hearing aids, and then he began utilizing the cochlear implants. He did light up when the cochlear implants went on. There was a brightness there, and that was also made into a video and a spotlight with the University of Iowa cochlear implant team. And then talk about how he learns best.
In person.
Yeah. Physically, one-on-one, someone showing him signs, him, you know, he pretty much mimics you. It's like a little shadow. If I do something, if I get a screwdriver out of the drawer, he wants a screwdriver. You know, if I'm shoveling the snow outside, he wants to be out there shoveling.
Yes.
You know, and he's even, you know, using a little like sign, you know, for the shovel. Like we literally got home and he wanted to go shovel tonight.
He'll be the best shoveler anyone has ever asked for.
But it's cool. It's
just
great
cool
to
to see
see this the work that, you know, everyone's putting in coming, you know, it's working.
Yes.
The process is working. You can see it happening.
Mhm.
And, you know, he can communicate with us, you know, using the signs or physically taking us to, like you said, the cupboard or the fridge and, you know, getting us to get the pancakes out or getting eggs out, you know. So
Yes.
it's been great.
So Rick, you have your business. Brittany's works outside of the home. That whole balance with early access, Niall's needs, Niall's medical needs. You talked a little bit about your families were able to support that.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about the flexibility with the team members. And I think, you know, all of those pieces coming together. We talked a little bit about grieving together and writing together, being able to say, you guys being able to say, this week's not working, this week's looking really busy, or can we switch? Can we put these two visits together? And I think being able to advocate for yourselves as well as for your child has been a huge piece.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
So this is kind of the rundown of where Niall's medical needs all came in. There's been several surgeries that have gone into place there, and he definitely has surgeries coming up yet, you know, and then along with surgeries, he had the rhinovirus, he had pneumonia and other health related. So there were times that we would have a visit and then it would be like, oh, we need to cancel. Niall, you know, Niall's in the hospital and for a week at a time.
Yeah.
And that was a huge factor for you guys. So when you started with early access, what did you expect?
We were very unfamiliar with it at the very beginning. There was no question. I mean,
Pretty much no clue what was going to go on.
Yeah. And now obviously it's been life-changing.
Well, the big thing
life-changing.
too is like we didn't know. I mean, I can't remember how we got connected.
Through the NICU. The NICU and Iowa connected us through.
And that was huge too, just because we didn't have a clue.
Being first-time parents and with a child with special needs and so we are very grateful for early access and
we're so fortunate to have the, you know, access to you guys, you know, and helping develop, you know, now and into the little kitty is now.
We can really see the progress that was made. So
great. And then what can families expect from their IFSP team? And when we talked about this was kind of us going back and forth and kind of just writing some of those things down, which we really kind of highlighted.
Encouragement, yes.
You would really want to share more information about?
I'm just reading them through.
Yep. We wrote them a couple last week or so.
Yeah, I just, like I said, I think it's
the encouragement. It's huge.
Yeah, I think it's fun that, you know, you're almost like extended family to us. And like I said, being able to share the videos with you of like Niall's progress is so fun to, and like you said, you just get the same enjoyment like we get out of, you know, of seeing Niall do something. You're just as thrilled and happy to see that he's doing that.
Then we talked a little bit about it's okay. Yes. We talked about it's okay when you say I can't do a visit that day and it was okay, or that life is messy and that so
yes.
Oh, life is messy, right? You know, there's time, you know, like, oh, I don't want you to come, my laundry's not put away. And
yes, very true there.
You were always worried about that laundry. Oh, don't worry about the laundry. So, the pictures, I think the celebrations, the videos, I think we all looked forward to those and we will all embrace those because they were part of that process. I will say that one of the things that was even more exciting is when he graduated from the early access and he became eligible for an IEP. The grandparents were there.
Mm-hmm.
Had cupcakes.
Cupcakes, yes.
Party. So it was very exciting to be able to look at that. So then we looked at that transition to the IEP. So that happened a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Along the way, we talked about what does that process look like? What does eligibility look like? Because it is very different to an IEP from an IFSP. We looked at Miss Lisa's class because he was eligible. So we did a visit prior. We had transition with the family. We looked at busing. We looked at routines. So what was that like, which would be like a year ago, next month
Yeah. It was crazy. I mean, yeah, like you kind of.
I was gonna say, it's just nice to continue the process, you know, at the school now. And it's nice that you can still go visit him and see him and work with him. And Niall is huge on having his routines, and he gets upset when, you know,
routines are not there.
Yeah, things change. And so that's, I mean, I know it's coming up here, you know, having, you know, the one-on-one experiences with the teachers. You know, it started out with, you know, going 2 times, you know, a week, and, you know, and then we said, you know, hey, I think it's going to be more beneficial to get now every day, get them in there more.
That's been
because,
very beneficial.
And like I said, I have mad props for all the teachers and educators that have to deal with kids, because when we had to do it online,
it was very challenging.
It was like pulling teeth. But it's amazing what you guys do.
Thank you.
So we were unfortunate because we had February, he became eligible, and then March we hit COVID.
Yes.
And schools closed. So we, again, continued that conversations, we continued that communication. Then we came back at the beginning of this school year in September.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another piece I think that is very important for families to consider about how to advocate for their child. So Iowa City returned to school online in September, and that was very difficult for Niall. And that it was difficult for Niall. He knew he had seen his teacher last year, but only for about a month.
Mm-hmm.
And then was separated. And so was seeing, you know, everybody on a screen. And then, like, what was he supposed to do with that? And then we went back hybrid A. So Iowa City started with AAA BB days and then AABBB. So you went Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday 1 week, and Monday, Tuesday the next week as hybrid A. And in September, we started that. And in November, we reconvened, because that was at the end of September, I should note. In November, we reconvened because Brittany and Rick said, we want him to go every day. We feel that he's missing opportunities, and that they wanted him to have the best opportunity with the routines and with his learning. And we looked at the information, and the team agreed that was indeed. We made those changes in the return to learn plan. Then we hit again another online period in through December. And unfortunately, we did not have enough data. It was not as difficult, I would say.
Yeah.
And what do you think were factors that made it not as difficult?
I think he had met his friends. He saw them on the screen after that had started already, was huge.
Because he would, wave to everyone, you know, when they would come on, or like to share, like you'd have a toy or something and show everyone what toy he was playing with.
He really, it got better. It was definitely not ideal, but it got better to where it was last year by far.
Yes, definitely. And so that was one of the things that we did convene to look at the aspect of, did we have enough data? And we did not have enough data to make that change of looking at him, even though all of the other kids were online, of him coming into the building during that shutdown, quote unquote, time. So we continued to work through the online pieces. And then we were fortunate enough in December that we came back hybrid again and have maintained that hybrid status. So where we're at kind of right now. So we're in the process of, we're here at the end of January. Next month, we will be doing his IEP annual review, which means that we'll be getting together again and talking about where we're at, what else do we need to be doing on site, and supporting Niall.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else you would like to add?
No. Again, we are very grateful for Kim, and early access has been, life-changing.
It's been amazing. It's just like I said, it's funny to go back and look at the pictures
I was just doing that earlier
on your phone
Mm-hmm.
and see the leaps and bounds he's made just with having
Early access
in our life.
Huge. Life-changing.
Yeah.
Really, there's no question.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great. So Karen, do you want to field the questions or?
I do. I think I'm going to unpin you and bring you all back to gallery so that everybody can see each other. Wonderful. All right. Well, the first thing that I want to say is thank you so much for the presentation. You all have such great energy. Kim, you do. Brittany and Rick, you guys both do very much. You can tell that you guys have a very energetic family.
Oh, yes, very.
Yeah.
A little too much at times, but that's okay.
Well, it seems like between the two of you, you must have synchronized parenting down.
Some days.
Between the two of you, you can get it. I can just envision the shovel and the pots and pans where the hearing aid goes in the pots and pans and all those things that you're talking about. And the families that we work with, that when we invite providers into our homes, all of us at ASK are also people who have kids with special healthcare needs or some sort of different ability. And so I can relate to the whole, but my laundry's not put away.
Yes, totally true.
I can't have you over. I want to ask if anybody has any questions. And if so, you have a couple of options. You can type your questions in the chat, or you can raise your Zoom hand, or you can raise your actual hand. And we'll go one at a time with questions for Kim and the Crons. And Shirley, I think I saw your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yes. I just want to let you know that I really admire both of you for putting the effort for your child, because there's not a lot of parents that do that, honestly. And so I really admire both of you. And I just want to congratulate you and keep up the good work. Keep trying to communicate with Niall. Communication, like you said, is very, very important. And the question, I have two questions for you. First of all, you mentioned about child serve. So my first question is, what is that? And then my second question is, you talked about a NICU. What is that?
Oh, child serve is where he goes to therapy now. He goes to physical therapy and speech therapy at child serve. And then Niall was actually born at 33 weeks. And so he spent 51 days.
I'm sorry. Where is child serve?
In Corville, sorry. Corville, Iowa, yep.
They actually have offices all over Iowa.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And then Niall, the NICU, Niall was born at 33 weeks, so we stayed in there for 51 days to let him develop and grow until my actual due date of April.
So a NICU is at any hospital, a neonatal intensive care unit is a NICU.
Correct. Yep, you got it.
Thank you. Okay, I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't that meant something else.
Yeah, no, you're
glad. I'm glad you did that, Shirley, because lots of new parents don't know all those acronyms. So it's
you're exactly, yeah.
This is Tammy. I have a question. First of all, thank you again for sharing your story. You guys, it seemed like you guys accomplished a lot actually in a short period of time, considering all the medical appointments and the different surgeries and those kinds of things. So that's pretty exciting. It seems like you guys were able to be flexible and change things up so that your son was successful. But the question I have specifically, because I know that happens sometimes, are you, and it's great that you have such good family involvement that are able to help support you guys. Are you involved, or have you met other families in the area that you guys are able to kind of
talk with?
Or
the only time, not really a ton of families.
But I think that would be a great.
We would love that to meet more families,
just so you can relate and talk the stories, or like, hey, does your kid do this, or like, because I
definitely, I don't know if you guys probably kind of back, but The Bachelor has somebody with a cochlear implant, so I feel like I can relate to her. I don't know if anybody watches The Bachelor, but the new season of The Bachelor, and I feel like I connect with families that have the cochlear implants, and I wish we would know more people that do.
Just so we could ask questions, and be like, how long did it take your son or daughter, to start speaking words?
Yeah, I just feel like I connect to other families very well that have children that are hard of hearing or.
Yeah.
I think I hear him coming home now. If you want to meet him, Niall, do you want to meet some new friends? Niall, and this is Niall. Hi, just got home. Hi, friends.
Oh my goodness, that's a whole lot of cute on one screen right there.
Hi, friends. Yeah. Can you give them the thumbs up? Can you talk? Can you say hi? Hi. Yeah.
Hi.
You say hi, guys?
Look, there's Miss Kim.
There's Miss Kim.
Yep.
Yes.
Well, I have one more question for you before we get going. And it's a question it's kind of for each one of you. So for Brittany and Rick, when you think about giving advice to new parents around self-care and relationship care between the two of you, and you could give one piece of advice around that, what would it be? And Kim, yours would be one piece of advice for new professionals coming into the field and they need to partner well with families. What do they need to know?
I would say for us, again, we circle back, communication is huge. Being involved, and both of us involved, is huge.
The flexibility. The
flexibility, yes.
And obviously, both of us working together, because obviously
working together is huge.
Having a lawn care business during the summer months, gone a lot, so obviously it helps, if, Brittany or my parents or even my in-laws could, come into a meeting sometime. It was huge.
Yes.
That they would allow, like I said, we've talked, it takes a village, sometimes to raise, a kid.
Agreed. Thank you. Kim, how about you?
I guess if I think
I have a question too.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll catch that right before we wrap up. Go ahead, Kim, and then we'll do Vanya.
Okay. So professionally, I guess one of the things I would think about is the aspect of that communication, of open communication, where I can share the information with them and they can use that information how they want to use that information that best meets their family's needs, as well as that communication of them being able to tell that this is something that we want to pursue at this time, this is something we want to hold on to. So, just the not having any judgment as where they are or what they want, but giving those all those opportunities for them to be able to make those decisions that's best for them.
Thank you, Kim. Vanya, go ahead.
No, silly boy, no. Hi, friends, say hi.
Oh, sorry, I was a little lost. I'm wondering how many deaf or hard of hearing students in Niall's age range are in the area near Coralville.
I don't. That's a good question. I don't know. Kim, do you know?
An ability to be able to be around some deaf peers and socialize that way. I don't know if you have any data about that.
So peer-wise at his school, He does not have any other peers at the preschool that he goes to. And for preschools in the area that are the same age. We are fortunate that we have a person at the elementary school who is also deaf herself, who is a para in the building. So we have a para in the building that is deaf that provides services for another student that is older, that I would say that the other professionals have been able to utilize as a resource on what is happening in the building, her communication with the staff as well as with Niall.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you.
We don't know of
Appreciate
any
that.
other kids Niall's age or any other friends or anything like that that have any kids that are hard of hearing. Or
oh yeah,
So stay connected with the EDDI program, even though we work predominantly with families and kids that are 1 or younger or 3 or younger. A lot of the older families help mentor new families. And
That's yes.
Yeah, so now that you're on the list of getting the information about the events that happen and the webinars and what have you, hopefully you'll be able, especially
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. We really enjoyed this last hour getting to know you and then sharing our story. And like Rick said, we wish we knew other families that had children. So hopefully we can, now that we've met you all, we can continue to meet more families that have been through things like this, or we can advocate for families as well.
Absolutely. And staying connected with the Deaf Mentor Cadre is another great way to stay involved with the deaf and hard of hearing community.
Yes.
Also, a little bit of a shameless plug here as we wrap up. The National EDDI Conference is going to be happening at the beginning of March. And I know the registration is open. So if that's something that you're interested in attending, be sure that you search that or circle back with one of us. And we'll
absolutely. I'm sure Kim could probably get us connected with that.
Yeah, lots of families attend that and other deaf mentors. And
is that on? Would that be like online?
This year it's online. Usually it's in person.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, I think that would be cool.
Can we? I guess could you send us? I mean, send us information. Okay.
Yep. When I wrap up here, the recording will have to play for a while on my screen, and then I'll send you information.
Perfect.
We would appreciate that. We'd enjoy it.
You bet. Vanya, do you have another question?
Yeah, I wanted to add something.
Go ahead.
I just want to share a little bit with you, an update kind of for the parents' awareness. You can check Hands and Voices. They're a group in Iowa. They are a group that involves parents with deaf and hard of hearing children, and they kind of set up socializing events and things like that. So they might be a good
thank you.
I just wrote that down.
Information and resources.
Perfect. Thank you. I just wrote that down here that I know an EDDI conference.
And then also, as an ASL instructor, I teach elementary kids once a month or so. And so, I mean, if you need anything, I would be willing to support you and help you learn ASL. So I
love it.
Meet you so much, and I hope you have a great evening.
Yes, thank you all.
Thanks for joining us tonight, everybody. We went a little
Shirley,
bit over
I have
time.
something, one more thing, if you don't mind.
Okay. Yep, we've got time. Go ahead.
I think it was started about 4 or 5 years ago. In August, we would have a Deaf Adventure Day, or Deaf Day at Adventureland. And so parents that have deaf kids and just deaf adults and everybody would come. It was a great time to meet a bunch of family and have a lot of fun. It was canceled last year, obviously, because of COVID.
But yeah.
We'll see. It's still in the works this year. We'll see what's going on.
Oh, that'd be really
different, but it's a great way to meet other parents with deaf and hard of hearing students. I just want to put that out there.
Yes, I got that in my notes.
Sometime around August.
Got my notes here as well. August. Okay. I didn't write that part. Cool.
There are a number of outings like that. They go let's see, the deafblind group has gone to the zoo the last 3 or 4 years.
Cool. Okay.
Hands and Voices sponsored a trip to a baseball game one time.
Oh,
So we'll keep you connected and make sure you get on those lists and know what those all
please. We would love that. Yes. I'm taking some good now. Now's got himself in the drawer here. So, well, thank you all. We really appreciated meeting you and sharing our story. Yeah, can you say
Thank you
bye?
for joining us.
Bye. Thank
Thank you so
Have a
much.
great night, everybody.